We had a 600 increase percent in church last weekend, and I've heard the same across the board. My question for you, because you brought up George Floyd, is seeing the response after George Floyd was killed, which was wrong. It was wrong what happened to him. And I spoke about what happened to him. So it wasn't like I was this silent white conservative, but the response and what took place afterwards, can you speak to that? Or I want to open it up. Yeah. Speak to what, we can all see with our eyes, right? So we can all acknowledge that there is a very different response happening right now in the wake of what's happened with Charlie, if we wanted to call it like a, crime, or so to speak, and versus with George, just the response that we see with Charlie versus what happened with all the BLM and after George Floyd was killed and whatnot. Seeing that, and maybe you can educate me on that, is BLM grouped in with liberals, would you say, or was like, how
BLM
does
is
that?
a movement. There's an organization and there's a movement. So the idea that Black Lives Matter is that if we are going, and I really want to let other folks speak, but I just want to answer you very briefly.
No, it's just, you brought it up,
because I'll let them actually answer your first question. I think that's fair about George Floyd and the difference. And then if I feel like there's something and they say there's enough time, I'll chime in. Thank you for, at the end of the day, George Floyd wasn't saying things that are historically inaccurate and things that could be construed as hateful rhetoric. Now, and that's just.
We're talking about the response.
So that's
like
why.
But
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, and I know that you guys don't have our lived experience, and we don't have lived experience. People watching, and we don't have your lived experience. So thank you for the question and for context. I'm not the absolute on anything Black, but I'm telling you, or liberal or left, but I'm telling you, by and large, as someone who is out there, it's like the conflating of someone who was a victim of this crime, and Charlie was absolutely a victim. I don't care what anybody says. Like, he was absolutely a victim. That should have never happened. And you have my condolences, you and your church, because that's my humanity. You know what I mean? And that's like, I will never unsee what happened to him, right? Just like I will never unsee what happened to George Floyd. I've been deeply disturbed since I've seen that. But the response is, and I want other people to speak on this. Yeah. First of all, George Floyd was not a public figure until he was murdered.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So when I go out there and I speak, I'm accountable for the things I'm saying, how I'm saying, and if they're historically inaccurate. So people were upset and people were offended. And I feel like they felt as though, and I received this, they felt as though they were being attacked for not mourning someone who they felt had been attacking them. However, I don't need to speak too much on that, because the very first thing I said about this was I condemn, and it's not appropriate, right? And, and nobody wins, and it says more about us than anybody else if we celebrate someone's murder. You can circle back to me, I'm gonna let them speak.
No, I was genuinely curious what the census is.
I think the difference is exactly what you were saying, that George Floyd was an innocent man, and Charlie Kirk was a public political figure who made a lot of really harmful remarks. I think that my biggest frustration in the way people have responded to Charlie Kirk is there's so much policing of the way the left has responded to it. If we're not falling to our knees being like, this is a terrible thing, and Charlie was an innocent man, and essentially ignoring his entire past, definitely don't condemn political violence, but I can also sit here and say he said a lot of terrible things, and I think that's...
What terrible things? I want to hear what terrible things.
Black women don't have the mental capacity
No, that's not, he never said that. See, this is the problem with fake news. They twist his words.
You have to watch, have you watched the whole clip?
Yes.